Here, in part 5 of the lecture, we learned about some very interesting coevolution that has occurred between insects and fungi. In fact, termites and ants, the insects being considered, could be considered as the world's first farmers. First thing we find is that a large number of ant species are known as leafcutter ants, and they cut fragments of leaves from high in the canopy and bring it down to their nest for digestion by fungi. Keeping in mind, remembering that these fungi are able to break down cellulose and lignin. These animals can be quite ferocious, as you see in the bottom right. Look at the size of those jaws. And, of course, look at the 2 fingers that are holding the ant, which has been cut by, the fingers have been cut by that ant. So if you decide you want to go pay attention to leafcutter ants when you're out in the field in the tropics, please be careful. It turns out that ants and termites have evolved a novel mechanism to use fungi in a symbiotic relationship. And let's explore one of those relationships. Here I'm going to talk about Termitomyces titanicus, which produces the largest mushroom in the world. And this mushroom is a prized food across many parts of Africa. Termitomyces form a symbiotic relationship between termites, and these fungi are only and always found associated with termite mounds. In that way, if you decide to go hunting for Termitomyces as a food source, you just look for the termite mound. Let's break down this life cycle so that you can begin to see the interaction between termites and the fungus. In plate A in the top left, a male and female alate meet. Alate is simply a term that describes a winged insect that is normally without wings. Together they excavate a hole in the ground, a colony chamber, and begin to produce workers. Those workers then encase the royal pair in a chamber and begin to go out and acquire 2 resources. First is wood, chips, or leaves as a food substrate, and then they go look for spores. They bring the spores and the food, the wood and grass particles, leaf particles down into the chamber, and in that moist environment, the spores germinate. On the right, you can begin to see the consequences. As the spores germinate, the hyphae begin to grow, digesting the wood particles, grass, leaves, etc. That forms an energy source for developing new termites. The older decaying parts of the comb are used as a food source for some of the older workers. And here you find that there are 2 sets of workers. A set of workers that are on the outside, collecting the particles and bringing them in, and a set of workers that are moving things around on the inside. In the process of doing this, let's look at it in cross-section, and we can discuss this topic further. There are 2 sets of termites, the foragers and those that tend the nest. Those that forage bring back the particles, which are then partly digested, producing a pseudo-feces, a partially digested component of wood or grass. That is then deposited, the termites deposit the pseudo-feces as a food source for the fungal hyphae. The hyphae then excrete enzymes, breaking down the carbohydrates and the lignin into smaller molecules, which are then used as a food source by the developing termites or to feed the queen for increased egg production. The secret of these termite mounds is a venting structure. The purpose of the venting structure is to increase air circulation so that we have entry into and entry and exit out of, so that as the wind blows, air is pulled out of the chamber and new air is sucked in. At the end of the year, the vegetative fungal spores come together to form these beautiful mushrooms that are then escape through the outside of the termite mound. We can begin to see this here in this image, where the fungal garden is tended by the termites, and the fungal mycelium, the haploid form, continue to grow. Then at some point, the fungal hyphae come together, briefly reproduce, forming a zygote, which then forms the haploid form, and a mushroom follows that as a reproductive structure, and that reproductive structure pierces through the termite mound. You can watch a very interesting video about termites produced by David Attenborough at the YouTube site listed above. As you can see in this image with a giraffe for scale, these termite mounds can be extremely large. Now let's stop the video and test your understanding of what you just learned. Here are 3 true-false questions. Once you have written down your answers, then restart the video and see if your answers are correct. Here are the answers to the true-false questions. The first answer is false. Pseudofeces are partly digested leaf and wood material collected by termites. They do not represent the aftermath of ants consuming fungal hyphae. The second statement is true. And the third statement is false. Fungi such as Termitomyces produce extraordinarily large fruiting bodies that are prized as a local food across many parts of Africa. And that ends this section of the lecture.